The giant skeletons of the Smithsonian. Between 1880 and 1920, newspapers across America published hundreds of accounts describing the discovery of unusually large human skeletons. These reports came from credible sources: university archaeologists, county surveyors, medical doctors, and museum directors. The skeletons measured between 7 and 9 feet tall, found in burial mounds stretching from Ohio to California. Witnesses documented jawbones that could fit over a normal human face, massive femurs suggesting towering height, and skulls with double rows of teeth. The discoveries were photographed, measured, and shipped to the Smithsonian Institution for further study and preservation. Then something unusual happened. The skeletons vanished. Researchers who later inquired about these specimens received identical responses. No records existed, no catalog numbers matched, no storage locations could be found. The Smithsonian claimed these reports were either hoaxes or misidentified remains of normal individuals. Yet the original newspaper articles included names, dates, and specific measurements. Local historical societies kept correspondence proving the bones were indeed sent to Washington. By the mid-20th century, every physical specimen had disappeared from official records. The implications were staggering. If a race of exceptionally tall humans once inhabited North America, it would challenge established narratives about migration patterns and ancient populations. It would raise questions about why this information was systematically removed from public knowledge. Some researchers suggested the evidence contradicted prevailing academic theories, making it professionally inconvenient. Others pointed to institutional control over historical narratives. What remains undeniable is a pattern: hundreds of documented discoveries, all sent to one institution, all vanishing without trace. The absence of evidence became evidence itself, not of fraud, but of something far more troubling. An entire chapter of human history was quietly erased, leaving only fading newspaper clippings as proof it ever existed. The Baghdad Battery Collection. In 1936, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig discovered a collection of clay jars in the ruins of a Parthian settlement near Baghdad. Each jar contained a copper cylinder, an iron rod, and showed evidence of corrosive acidic liquid. Koenig recognized the configuration immediately. These were galvanic cells, primitive batteries capable of generating electrical current. The design was elegant and functional, dating back more than 2,000 years. If filled with vinegar or acidic wine, these devices could produce 1 to 2 volts of electricity. Modern replicas confirmed they worked perfectly. The discovery challenged everything historians believed about ancient technology. Conventional timelines placed electrical understanding in the 18th century with Benjamin Franklin and Alessandro Volta. Yet here was physical evidence of electrochemical knowledge from the Parthian Empire, created around 200 BCE. The batteries were not isolated curiosities. Dozens existed, suggesting widespread production and practical application. Researchers theorized they were used for electroplating gold onto silver objects, a technique that would explain the impossibly thin, perfectly uniform gold layers found on ancient Persian jewelry. The Baghdad Museum housed the complete collection, meticulously catalogued and available for study. Then came 2003 and the invasion of Iraq. During the chaos, the museum was systematically looted. While media focused on stolen sculptures and tablets, the battery collection vanished entirely. No fragments recovered, no pieces surfaced in black markets, no photographs remained in museum databases. International archaeological organizations issued formal protests, but the artifacts never reappeared. The convenient timing raised uncomfortable questions. These batteries represented technological sophistication that contradicted established historical narratives about ancient capabilities. Their disappearance ensured mainstream academia could continue dismissing them as anomalies rather than confronting evidence that ancient civilizations possessed electrical knowledge millennia before recorded history acknowledged. What remained was only Koenig's original documentation, photographs that are now conveniently disputed as misinterpretations. The Fuente Magna bowl. In 1958, a Bolivian farmer discovered a large ceramic bowl while working near Lake Titicaca. The artifact was covered in strange symbols that local museums initially dismissed as decorative patterns. The bowl sat in private collections for decades, until researchers examined it closely in the late 20th century. What they found was extraordinary. The symbols were Proto-Sumerian cuneiform, one of humanity's oldest writing systems, originating in Mesopotamia around 3000 BCE. On the opposite side of the world, at 12,000 feet elevation in the Bolivian Andes, Ancient text from the Fertile Crescent had somehow appeared. Linguistic experts who examined the bowl identified legitimate Sumerian characters, not random imitations. The inscription appeared to reference Nia, a Sumerian goddess, suggesting religious or ceremonial significance. If authentic, the bowl proved transoceanic contact between ancient civilizations millennia before Columbus, Vikings, or any accepted historical voyage. It challenged isolationist theories, claiming American civilizations developed independently. It suggested ancient Sumerians possessed navigation technology and geographic knowledge conventional history denies them. Academic institutions immediately mobilized to discredit the finding. Mainstream archaeologists attacked the bowl's provenance, claiming it lacked proper excavation documentation. They suggested modern forgery despite clear evidence of ancient ceramic composition and weathering patterns consistent with genuine artifacts. The Bolivian government, under pressure from international archaeological organizations, restricted access to the bowl. It was moved from public display into restricted storage. Researchers requesting examination faced bureaucratic obstacles. Published papers analyzing the bowl were systematically excluded from major archaeological journals. Photography became limited, measurements disputed, and linguistic analysis dismissed as imaginative interpretation. What made the suppression particularly revealing was its coordination. Multiple institutions across different countries simultaneously rejected the evidence using nearly identical language. The bowl still exists, technically accessible, but functionally disappeared behind institutional gatekeeping. Its message remains unread by mainstream scholarship, its implications carefully buried beneath academic consensus that transoceanic contact was impossible. The Los Lunas Decalogue stone. On a remote volcanic mesa in New Mexico stands a massive boulder covered in ancient Hebrew text. The inscription is the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, carved in Paleo-Hebrew script used before 500 BCE. The stone weighs more than 80 tons and shows weathering consistent with extreme age. Local ranchers knew about it for generations before archaeologist Frank Hibben documented it in 1933. The linguistic style, letter formations, and grammatical structures match Dead Sea Scroll Hebrew perfectly. Modern Hebrew speakers cannot easily read it, but ancient language experts recognize it immediately. The implications were revolutionary. If authentic, Hebrew-speaking peoples reached North America more than 2,000 years before European colonization. It suggested ancient Israelites or Phoenicians possessed navigation capabilities and geographic knowledge that conventional history completely denied. The stone's location, far inland and elevated, implied established settlements rather than accidental landings. Academic response was immediate and hostile. Mainstream archaeologists declared it a hoax, despite having no viable explanation for who could create such a forgery or why. The Paleo-Hebrew script was not widely known in the 19th century when the stone was allegedly carved. Forgers typically make mistakes. This inscription contained none. Geologists examined weathering patterns and confirmed the carving predated modern historical periods by centuries, potentially millennia. Patina depth indicated extreme age, yet major universities refused funding for comprehensive dating analysis. Research proposals were rejected without review. The stone became professionally toxic. Archaeologists who expressed interest faced career consequences. Published studies were systematically excluded from mainstream journals. The site received no official protection or recognition. Vandals damaged portions of the inscription, and authorities showed minimal interest in preservation. What made the suppression revealing was its consistency. Evidence that challenged Eurocentric historical narratives was uniformly dismissed regardless of scientific merit. The stone remains, massive and undeniable, yet invisible to official archaeology. Its message is clear, but academia refuses to read it. The Michigan Relics. Between 1890 and 1920, excavations across Michigan unearthed thousands of slate and copper tablets covered in unusual symbols and imagery. The artifacts depicted biblical scenes, ancient Mediterranean architecture, and writing systems resembling Minoan, Egyptian, and Hebrew scripts. They emerged from controlled archaeological digs supervised by credible witnesses, including clergy, lawyers, and businessmen. The quantity was staggering, over 3,000 objects, all showing consistent artistic style and manufacturing techniques. Many carried sequences of symbols suggesting organized language. Several tablets depicted oceanic vessels with Mediterranean design characteristics. The artifacts told a story of ancient transoceanic contact and established settlements in pre-Columbian North America. The Detroit Museum acquired the collection and initially displayed it publicly. Academic analysis began, with some scholars noting the linguistic patterns showed legitimate structure rather than random decoration. Chemical analysis of copper composition matched ancient Mediterranean metallurgy. Slate oxidation patterns suggested genuine age. Then institutional pressure mounted. Major universities declared the entire collection fraudulent without comprehensive examination. The reasoning was circular. Transoceanic contact was impossible. Therefore, anything suggesting it must be fake. Critics claimed a 19th century forger created thousands of tablets as an elaborate hoax, despite having no evidence of forgery techniques, no identified forger, and no rational motive for such massive effort. The museum quietly removed the collection from display. Artifacts were packed into storage, and access became increasingly restricted. Researchers requesting examination faced delays and denials. Published studies were systematically rejected from mainstream journals. By the mid-20th century, the Michigan Relics had been functionally erased from archaeological discourse. What makes this suppression particularly notable is its completeness. 3,000 artifacts, representing decades of discoveries, were collectively dismissed and buried. The collection still exists in storage, technically available, but professionally untouchable. Any archaeologist showing interest risks career damage. The relics challenged narratives about isolated American development, suggested sophisticated ancient navigation, and implied historical knowledge had been systematically sanitized. The Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Roman head. In 1933, archaeologist José García Payón excavated a burial site in the Toluca Valley of central Mexico. Among pre-Columbian artifacts, he discovered a small terracotta head depicting a bearded man with distinctly Roman features. The artistic style, facial structure, and craftsmanship were unmistakably Mediterranean, completely unlike indigenous Mesoamerican artwork. The head was found in an undisturbed archaeological layer sealed beneath 3 intact floors, definitively dated to between 1200 and 1300 CE. There was no possibility of later intrusion or planting. The head was ancient, Roman in origin, and buried in Mexico centuries before Columbus. Payón documented everything meticulously: excavation photographs, stratigraphy reports, witness statements from his archaeological team. He recognized the implications immediately. This single artifact proved Romans reached the Americas during antiquity, suggesting either direct voyages or extensive trade networks spanning oceans. It challenged every assumption about ancient navigation limits and isolated continental development. Mainstream archaeology responded with immediate rejection. Critics claimed the head must have been introduced through unclear means despite perfect archaeological context. Some suggested post-Columbian mixing, but the sealed stratigraphic layers made that physically impossible. The head was eventually sent to European institutions for thermoluminescence dating. Results confirmed it originated in Rome's imperial period, approximately 2nd century CE. Rather than accepting this evidence, academic institutions began questioning the excavation itself. They suggested Payón fabricated documentation, though he was a respected archaeologist with decades of credible work. The head moved between museums, always in restricted access. Mainstream journals refused to publish updated analysis. Archaeology textbooks ignored its existence entirely. What made the suppression particularly effective was isolation. One artifact, however compelling, could be dismissed as anomalous. Without supporting evidence, it remained professionally invisible. Yet the head exists. Roman in origin, found in pre-Columbian context, scientifically dated and archaeologically verified. Its message is clear. Romans reached Mexico. Academia's response is equally clear. We refuse to acknowledge it. The head disappeared, not physically, but professionally, erased from acceptable discourse. The Kensington Runestone evidence. In 1898, Swedish immigrant Olof Oman discovered a large stone slab entangled in tree roots on his Minnesota farm. The stone was covered in runic inscriptions describing a Norse expedition in 1362, decades before Columbus. The text detailed a journey from Vinland, deaths of expedition members, and geographical features matching Minnesota's landscape. Linguists examined the runes and found grammatical structures consistent with 14th century Swedish and Norwegian dialects. The stone showed weathering patterns, indicating centuries of burial. Tree ring analysis of the roots gripping it suggested the stone had been underground for at least 50 years before discovery, predating any known Scandinavian settlement in the region. Academic institutions immediately declared it fraudulent. The reasoning was predetermined. Norse presence in continental North America was impossible, therefore the stone must be fake. Critics claimed man carved it himself, despite him being a farmer with limited education and no known expertise in medieval Scandinavian languages or runes. The inscription contained linguistic features and dialectical variations unknown to 19th century scholars, but later confirmed authentic by modern runologists. The stone used runic characters that were not documented in accessible sources when man supposedly created his forgery. Multiple researchers conducted independent analyses throughout the 20th century. Geologists confirmed weathering patterns consistent with extreme age. Linguists identified authentic medieval language structures. Historians discovered expedition records in Scandinavian archives matching the stone's description. Yet mainstream archaeology maintained its rejection. Universities refused funding for comprehensive dating. Published supportive studies were systematically excluded from major journals. The stone was relegated to a small Minnesota museum, treated as local curiosity rather than historical evidence. What makes the suppression revealing is its persistence, despite accumulating evidence. Each new analysis confirming authenticity was met with dismissal. The stone challenged Columbian primacy in American discovery, threatened established historical narratives, and suggested European presence decades before accepted timelines. Rather than investigate objectively, academic institutions chose collective denial, ensuring the stone remained professionally disappeared. The Burrows Cave Artifacts. In 1982, Russell Burrows claimed to have discovered a cave in southern Illinois containing thousands of ancient artifacts. The objects included carved stones depicting Egyptian, Roman, Hebrew, and early Christian imagery. Some carried inscriptions in multiple ancient languages. Others showed Mediterranean artistic styles completely foreign to North American archaeology. Burrows produced photographs and brought samples to researchers. Initial examination revealed sophisticated carving techniques, consistent artistic themes, and linguistic patterns, suggesting genuine ancient origin. The quantity was overwhelming, potentially 10,000 pieces representing an enormous cache of pre-Columbian transoceanic evidence. The implications were explosive. If authentic, the cave proved extensive contact between Old World civilizations and ancient North America. It suggested established settlements, religious sites, and cultural exchange millennia before accepted historical timelines. Mainstream archaeology responded with unprecedented hostility. Burrows was immediately labeled a fraud, despite never profiting significantly from his claims. Skeptics demanded the cave's location, which Burrows refused to reveal, citing concerns about looting and destruction. This secrecy was used to dismiss everything without examination. Yet artifacts continued appearing. Chemical analysis of stone composition matched Mediterranean geology, not Illinois limestone. Linguistic experts identified legitimate ancient Hebrew and Phoenician scripts. Artistic analysis showed stylistic consistency, indicating single cultural source rather than random forgeries. Despite this, academic institutions refused serious investigation. Universities declined funding proposals. Journals rejected research papers. The few archaeologists who expressed interest faced professional consequences. What made the suppression particularly effective was focusing on Burrows' character rather than evidence. By attacking his credibility, academia avoided examining the artifacts themselves. Samples that reached researchers were dismissed regardless of analysis results. The cave's location remains unknown. Artifacts scattered across private collections, and mainstream archaeology considers the entire matter closed. Whether Burrows fabricated evidence or discovered something revolutionary, the response was identical: systematic suppression, professional ridicule, and institutional refusal to investigate. The pattern suggests academia fears the implications more than values truth. The Tucson Artifacts. Between 1924 and 1930, amateur archaeologist Charles Menier discovered dozens of lead crosses and ceremonial objects buried near Tucson, Arizona. The artifacts carried Latin and Hebrew inscriptions describing a Jewish Roman colony established in 800 CE. The text referenced specific historical figures, religious ceremonies, and geographical details. The objects showed artistic styles mixing Roman imperial imagery with Jewish religious symbols. Manufacturing techniques involved casting and engraving methods consistent with ancient Mediterranean metallurgy. Chemical analysis of the lead revealed composition matching Roman-era sources, distinctly different from modern lead. Mainstream institutions immediately declared them fraudulent. The reasoning was familiar: Romans in Arizona were impossible, therefore evidence must be fake. Critics suggested Menayer created them, though he lacked metallurgical knowledge or equipment for such sophisticated forgeries. The inscriptions contained linguistic features and historical references unknown in the 1920s, but later confirmed accurate by ancient historians. Some text referenced obscure Jewish sects and Roman military units that were not documented in accessible sources when the artifacts were supposedly forged. Multiple universities examined samples throughout the 20th century. Metallurgical analysis confirmed ancient manufacturing techniques. Linguistic scholars identified authentic Latin grammatical structures. Lead isotope analysis matched Mediterranean geological signatures, yet academic consensus remained unchanged. The artifacts were relegated to storage, excluded from mainstream archaeological discourse. Researchers who published supportive analysis faced career obstacles. What made the suppression notable was its uniformity across decades. Each new scientific test confirming authenticity was dismissed as inconclusive. The artifacts challenged narratives about isolated American development and European discovery timelines. Rather than investigate objectively, institutions chose preservation of established history over evidence. The Tucson artifacts remain, scientifically verified but professionally invisible, another example of archaeological evidence that disappeared not physically but from acceptable scholarship. Their message is clear: ancient civilizations reached America centuries before Columbus. Academia's response is equally clear: we refuse to acknowledge it, regardless of scientific proof. The Coso Artifact. In 1961, 3 rockhounds discovered an unusual geode in the Coso Mountains of California. When cut open, it revealed a metallic shaft surrounded by ceramic insulation and copper wire, resembling a modern spark plug. X-ray analysis showed a metallic core with hexagonal structure. The surrounding rock matrix appeared to be natural geological formation, suggesting the object had been encased for an extended period. Geologists estimated the concretion could be hundreds of thousands of years old based on similar formations. The implication was staggering: advanced manufactured technology embedded in ancient stone. Mainstream science immediately attacked the finding. Skeptics claimed it was simply a modern spark plug accidentally cemented into recent geological material. Despite the rockhounds being experienced collectors who recognized natural versus artificial concretions, the internal structure showed no modern manufacturing signatures. The ceramic and metal composition did not match any known 20th century spark plug design. Thread patterns on the shaft were inconsistent with automotive components. Yet rather than conduct comprehensive dating analysis, institutions dismissed it as obvious contamination. The artifact was displayed briefly in a private collection before disappearing entirely. Attempts to locate it for modern scientific testing have failed. The original owners died, and subsequent whereabouts remain unknown. Only photographs and initial X-rays survive. What makes this suppression revealing is the complete lack of serious investigation. An object potentially representing impossible ancient technology was dismissed without rigorous examination. Academic institutions showed no interest in definitive dating or metallurgical analysis that could resolve the mystery conclusively. The artifact challenged fundamental assumptions about technological development and human history. Its disappearance ensured these questions remained unanswered. Whether the Coso artifact represented misidentified modern technology or genuine ancient manufacturing, the response was identical: dismiss, discourage investigation, and allow physical evidence to vanish. The pattern across all 10 items is undeniable. Archaeological evidence that contradicts established narratives disappears systematically, professionally, if not physically. What humanity lost was not just artifacts but truth itself, carefully erased by institutions claiming to preserve history.